TGT. What the world is watching. Are you sick of me yet? I don't know if you are, but let's just say our next guest is back and better than ever, and he must be tired of hearing that by now. But short and sweet, we're going TNA today, folks. And away we go. Here we are, the man of the hour, Mr. Bischoff. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, but I've got a question for you guys. Whoever put together that intro, number one, great job. Number two, who was the kid? Who was the member in the red Ferrari? Because
that was me.
No, it wasn't. That was stock. That was stock footage.
I'm gonna talk to Conrad and tell him we need to raise the price.
It was me. It was me.
Yeah, you were in the bus, Antonio. Don't get it twisted. You were in the bus. Yeah, that's I'm a huge mark for SummerSlam 1989, so I had our good friend JD Hoop recreate that to kind of encompass what we do here. So
Great job.
He's awesome. So we've got Antonio Santos, we've got Henry, we've got Phil. Carl is he's in his world.
Yeah,
so
Carl's chair.
Yeah, we wanted to look back on something that you hadn't talked about yet, and that is the culmination of the Aces and Eights storyline in TNA. So we are going to go in and look at TNA Lockdown 2013, and we're going to look at the main event. And I need to be very honest, I have never seen this show because I was not a TNA fan. So I will apologize now, but
that's all right. I was there and I don't remember it. So
all right,
it could be virgin territory for all of us.
Okay, so we've got the TNA Impact app thing. What is
Impact
it?
Plus?
Yeah, Impact Plus. We've got that keyed up, and we're at 2 hours 24 minutes even, and it is Jeff Hardy and Bully Ray.
So, real quick before we get started, Eric, I got to admit that I was the one that really pushed to do this particular pay-per-view. And, most people are like, oh, you got to do a WCW thing with Eric. And I'm like, well, I mean, everyone loves WCW and everyone associates that with Eric Bischoff, but it's a little bit overplayed. We want to hear something that maybe we haven't heard a story of before. And most people associate your run in TNA with the Aces and Eights storyline. And for good, for better or worse, everything that happened with it. And it's such a polarizing story. But it also follows your Star formula to a T. And so I felt like it would be a perfect just piece of TNA history to watch along and talk with you about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I'm glad you picked it because this is a subject that, as of yet, hasn't really come up on the podcast and doesn't really come up in a lot of the Q&A, situations that I'm in throughout the year as I travel. So I'm glad you guys picked this one. And this was one that I was very, very, very hands-on with, as opposed to a lot of other storylines where I may have been involved, but really wasn't all that hands-on on a day-to-day basis. So this is a good choice. I'm glad you picked it, man.
All right, you guys owe me $5.
What do you mean? What?
No, you were all against it. Don't lie.
No, I was not.
Don't lie. God, why is still picking TNA?
So Phil, I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you do the countdown and everything. So do your thing.
The countdown? I don't know how to. What is it? No, I'm just kidding. We are already 2 hours, 24 minutes even in 3, 2, 1, play.
So I do have a quick question, Eric. Were you a fan of this? And I think you may have covered this in the podcast, but I just want to hear it again. Were you a fan of this all cage match thing? This whole cage match format?
No, are you talking the lockdown where
Yeah.
every match is in a cage?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just hated it. I hated it with a passion. I fought unsuccessfully, obviously, to figure out a way creatively to have the main event in the cage at Lockdown and have a great story that progressed in such a way as it made sense for that story to end in a cage and really focus on that cage match, much in the same way that cage matches used to be when I grew up, which were a natural, organic part of a long-term storyline.
Right.
Where two people had gone through so many different matches under different types of stipulations, and a winner could just not be declared for whatever reason. And I thought, I used to love those because it was a natural thing, right? It progressed according to
Right.
at least some story logic, and sucked me in as a result. Whereas, even at the time of lockdown, whatever year it was, what year was that? 2014?
13.
13.
Yep.
13.
2013.
By 2013, people were throwing cage matches up for no reason at all, just because they couldn't come up with a better idea. It wasn't storyline driven. It wasn't a part of an arc or a story evolution.
Right.
It just, what do we do? Oh, I know. Let's have a cage match. It's like stupid. And you see so many of them that it wasn't a big deal anymore. Now,
yeah.
Don't talk about a pay-per-view with 7 or 8 cage matches. Try to ask me how much I give a shit after seeing cage matches all over TV for a year. Now I've got a pay-per-view with no real stories going into them, very few of them anyway, legit stories that should have ended up in a cage. In fact, almost none of them, other than perhaps this one. But it was like, what better way to kill an audience is to give them 6 cage matches? I hate it.
When you say when you just said, like, for me, I started watching wrestling in 1988, and I remember, like, the big blow off, the culmination of like Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude was their SummerSlam cage match for the WWF Championship, but that was like the final blow off, right? Like, I think was it Bundy and Hogan in the cage, or was it?
Oh, don't ask me, brother. 1988, I was partying my ass off with my hot soon-to-be wife.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I just remember that. I remember cage matches as a blow off now, but you're right. I mean, I don't know that I would have been wanting to spend money on a pay-per-view that was just all cages to have cages kind of thing.
You would have definitely been amongst many, because many people did it.
Phil, can you kind of explain the background of what we're about to watch here? Bully. But I will say this: I love the fact that Bully Ray, Bubba Ray Dudley, got this like push. I think it's really, really cool. I really do. That was the one thing that I always stuck out to me, was he definitely deserved this. But go ahead, Phil. Can you tell me kind of the background of what's happening here?
Well, to kind of play, 6 degrees of TNA here, until about a year ago, I honestly hadn't watched maybe more than 10 combined minutes of anything TNA. And one day I got bored and I just started looking up matches about Ken Kennedy, Ken Anderson, because he's criminally underrated. And I've said this often on this show that he's one of those guys we should be talking about right now as a multi-time world champion, and he should be up there in the top echelon of wrestlers. And so I just kind of dug through different stuff. And then finally I saw that he was in Aces and Eights, and I'm like, Aces and Eights, I remember hearing something about that storyline. So that I really started digging into it and, learned that, Garrett Bischoff was in there, and then Bully Ray turned out to be the evil mastermind behind it all. And this is what we're at now. Bully Ray finally got his shot at Jeff Hardy, I believe, after earning Hulk Hogan's trust and earning this title match. And when he wins, it turns out that son of a bitch was behind it all along.
Yeah, and we even went so far, and I love the build up to it. Like I don't, as we go on, it'll, come back to me and things like that. But I couldn't sit here right now and kind of lay out to you how that story started and all that. Other than to generally say, I really wanted to create a meaningful faction, not just throw a bunch of guys together for no reason and give them a gimmick name and hope it sticks to the wall, because that shit never works, as we've seen over the years.
Yep.
I really wanted to come up with something that was similar in terms of its structure, meaning story, anticipation, reality, surprise, and action. I wanted to do something that I did previously in WCW, really with the NWO, and take what I learned from that, apply that SARSA formula to it, but do it in a way that didn't feel like a copy of the NWO. Yes, there were obviously elements of the NWO build within Aces and Eights, but it was a derivative. It wasn't a ripoff. And I distinguish between ripoffs of a character or derivatives of a character or ripoffs of a story or an angle and a derivative of a story and angle, because I'm a firm believer in derivatives. Not to go off on too much of a tangent here, but there's really only been 7 basic stories ever told for as long as human beings have been telling stories, dating back to when cavemen would take burned sticks from the fire and draw pictures of a buffalo hunt, or Native Americans, or whatever prehistoric man was hunting at the time. Those stories were basic stories, and the stories that evolved from them as storytelling evolved. There's basically 7 of them, and every movie you see, every television show you watch, other than the sitcom, obviously, or documentary, but any scripted thing that you watch on television, any wrestling you watch, is generally a derivative of one or more or combination of those 7 stories. So it's not about having an absolutely fresh idea, because, well, like I said, there's only been 7 of those motherfuckers in the last how many thousands of years. But when you can artfully craft a story or an angle, whatever you want to call it, by using the elements of previous stories that have worked, but then change them up enough so that they might remind the audience of another movie or another book or another television show or another wrestling storyline, but not be so blatant and thin that everybody goes, oh, fuck, that's just
Right.
a rip of that. So this was my attempt, and it really was a very successful attempt. If you talk to Bill Bully, he'll tell you it was probably one of the best angles he's ever been in. Not the best, but one of. And certainly the best thing that ever happened is in terms of a real long-term angle in TNA. And you'll hear that from a couple other people involved. But it kind of gets lost in the internet wrestling community ether, because, well, it's Bully putting over something Bully was in. Or if I put it over, it's me putting over something I was in.
Right.
So, but really in terms of its structure and the success of it and the way it played out, it was awesome. And, one of the biggest surprises we used was a love story, Romeo and Juliet, Beauty and the Beast, take your pick. Sorry, Billy. A love story between Hulk's daughter, Brooke, and Bully. And anyway, it was I think, honestly, look, I got lucky with NWO. It was my first time attempting to use a SARSA formula. The timing was right. It was absolutely the right talent to use. The audience was really ready for something like that because it was so fresh and different. That all those variables was the luck. And I know that. I especially now I know that. But Aces and Eights was not luck. Aces and Eights took a lot of care, a lot of thought, a lot of input from everybody involved. And it was more of a strategic move in terms of story than even NWO in some ways, not in all ways, but in some ways. So I was very proud of that storyline, and I'm glad we're looking at this again.
Eric, the one thing you say is that NWO was luck, but you have to realize for us that you changed the game in so many ways, or going live and all the other things that I mean, wrestling is the way it is now today. I think because of some of the things that you did in the mid '90s and late '90s and guaranteeing contracts and all. I mean, you've spoke about it too. So if the NWO was luck, you certainly killed it in all other areas, and that's just me being a mark. So go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, Eric, so good to see you. Let's unmute this.
You're not. We can hear you.
Oh, you got me? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got you.
All right. Oh, my bad. A little new setup. But Eric, the first thing is this is, and this may be way into the weeds of left field, but TNA Impact at this time when you're doing the Jersey Shore thing, was some of the criticism coming from the show like Sons of Anarchy? And do you think that's why you've had to defend it? And do you think at this time, in this time frame when those shows are popular, you guys are doing a good job of keeping your finger on the pulse of, okay, what is popular and what can we get some ancillary buys from?
Yeah, I mean, those are great question, by the way. Thank you. When you look at the Jersey Shore theme and association a couple times that we used, that was Dixie Carter. And that was more about publicity. That was more about trying to stay relevant. That was less storyline and more headline, if that makes sense.
Bad Bunny. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of sort of. Well,
Bad Bunny actually did a good job.
Bad Bunny rocked the fucking house.
Yeah, he was good. He was good.
Yeah.
All of us had to admit that. But no, I'm sorry. Please go on.
Yeah, you can't keep interrupting me, dude. This shit's going to go bad. I'm just kidding. Come on. Wake up. Wake up. But, Bad Bunny initially, I'm sure the initial idea of bringing Bad Bunny in was like, oh man, this guy's really popular with this segment of the audience that is not necessarily our audience. So let's bring him in so that we can expose our product to his audience. It's the TV version of getting the rub, right? But Bad Bunny took a hold of that opportunity, and I'm sure others within WWE who saw that opportunity and went, I can either show up and have fun and go through the motions and get a little bit of a rub, or I could show up and take a chunk of this place with me. And that's exactly what Bad Bunny did. Now, that didn't happen, with the Jersey Shore Association. That was just, us promoting them promoting us, and that was all driven by Dixie Carter. Aces and Eights was more of a storyline and less of a headline.
When we did the Bischoff family one, you made me want to hang out with Robbie E. so bad. That's all I know. He just sounds like a fun time. So
he's a hoot, man. As they say out here in Wyoming, he's a hoot. That's a guy you want to be at a campfire with.
I think I talked at the beginning of the show about this angle being polarizing, and the criticism obviously is, oh, Eric's just trying to recreate the NWO. He's out of fresh ideas. And, I think, like you had pretty much wrapping a bow on what you said earlier is you taking your experiences with creating the NWO, adding it to what you've already learned and what you've learned henceforth, and trying something different with it.
Yeah, look, a lot of that criticism came from guys like Dave Meltzer and other people like him, and then it filters down into the internet wrestling community, and that becomes a narrative. That's one of the reasons why I'm so vocal about Dave Meltzer and his ilk, because I think that they're actually bad for business overall. There's nothing good about them. They make a lot of money. Dave probably pockets $500,000 a year, convincing people he knows shit that he doesn't know. But overall, it's bad for business. Now, it didn't hurt me personally. Like, I didn't go, oh, fuck, I can't believe they're saying that. I don't give a shit about that. But, you can skew the audience with negativity, just like everything else in our lives are skewed by negativity. It's one of the reasons why I try to stay away from the news. I get the information I need to have based on what I think I need to have from a variety of sources, but I don't pay attention to news or headlines anymore, because the old saying, if it bleeds, it leads, it's gone way beyond that. It's gone way beyond that. And current events and politicians and the talking heads that support them or in business with them on every level, on both sides of the equation, has turned what used to be news into, actually, it's more professional wrestling than professional wrestling, actually, the way it's being presented. And I think, the internet wrestling community, much like the rest of social media, if you look at it, is so negative, most of it.
God, yeah.
And that's my problem with it. By the way, some of those same people, including Dave Meltzer, will look at what's going on in AEW and fail to see the similarities, because that would hurt him to have to go, oh yeah, well, he did that first. It ain't ever going to happen. But if I were producing TV today and anything that I did represented anything else that I had done before, that's the first criticism you're going to hear in the internet wrestling community, because it's just a natural troll-like mentality that, unfortunately, a lot of people kind of gravitate towards.
Absolutely.
All right, Phil, you're gonna have to help me here. Who just again? I had ads, so I'm just seeing.
It was Wes Briscoe and Eric Bischoff.
They just
Really?
got connected.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to say something that I find actually really cool about this is that they have little camera holes in the cage, so that you don't get that outside the cage shot the whole time.
No, what else is great? The cage isn't fucking red.
I hate that good old red hell in a cell, right?
I do like the fact that the Aces and Eights members be interfering and both wrestlers will be attacking it. Don't look like they're siding with one.
Yeah.
Did you guys know going into the Aces and Eights storyline on the onset that the culmination was going to be Bully Ray winning the world title?
Generally, yes. Generally, yes. We kind of pictured what we wanted in terms of, who's going to be the leader, who's going to end up having the world title, and what that meant after the pay-per-view. That was the end goal. That was the destination. And then we worked backwards from that destination and kind of came up with an idea of how we wanted to get there, when we wanted to reveal new members, how they were going to be revealed. All of those basic elements of the longer term storyline were done in advance. But I will tell you, when you work backwards, when I work backwards from the final destination, I make a lot of room for adjusting to whatever I thought I wanted to do along the way. Because as you get more and more input, and as you see how the audience reacts to certain things, or as a new opportunity kind of came along that you didn't anticipate when you first started, I left a lot of room to kind of weave around and take little side roads over here and over there, still heading to the same destination, but being willing to kind of explore back roads if something came up that made sense.
So I did want to. Oh God, did I just lose my?
I think
train of
Carl's
thought
muted
here?
again.
Did he mute? Oh, I wanted to ask Henry a question. Henry, can you tell me where this pay-per-view took place?
Yeah, I can. Give me just a second.
Because it is not the typical impact zone that I'm used to here.
I think that might have been one of the. Yeah, you're right, man. That was one of the venues I think where we took the show out on the road.
That actually leads me to a question for you. And answering Frank's, I have a question for you, Eric. Who exactly was in charge of site selection at TNA? Because when I went back and did a little bit of research, I found that this pay-per-view emanated from the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas. For those of us who don't have any idea what the hell the Alamo Dome is, It's a big football-sized stadium
Yep.
that is home to the namesake Alamo Bowl, which has been held in it since 1993. It was also the temporary home of the New Orleans Saints in 2005 after Hurricane Katrina devastated the Superdome in New Orleans.
Are you getting that off Wikipedia? Is that a Wikipedia thing?
A little bit. I also used Dave Meltzer's newsletter to try to shore up numbers, and when what he was reading didn't make sense to what I was reading, I then
imagine that. Surprise, surprise.
That was perfect. That was perfect.
My question more being, who is in charge of site selection? Because I like Impact. I like TNA. When I think shows in a place like the Alamo Dome, I think more WWE or even...
Well, that's why I wanted to know, Henry, where you got that from. Because while it might have been Alamo, so it wasn't the Alamo Dome, I can assure you.
It wasn't.
It was in Alamo, Texas, but it was far outside. And let me answer the question, because I don't remember the name of the venue, but I can assure you it wasn't the Alamo Dome. I don't think TNA was ready for dome shows at that point. It might have been a training facility on the premises, but it wasn't the Alamo Dome. I'm not 1,000% sure on this because it was something that I never got involved with at TNA. I never had a discussion with anybody about it. I was never asked an opinion about anything. So when I say I don't remember, it's not because I have a bad memory and I need an infusion of Prevision. It's because I was part of the business of TNA. I didn't get near. That being said, probably had a lot to do with Andy Barton and Dean Broadhead. Andy Barton was kind of the live event and touring person, and Dean was the CFO, Chief Financial Officer. So between the two of them, and obviously input from Dixie, but that's just a somewhat educated guess.
So Eric, I'm looking at. I looked this up because you're absolutely right.
I usually am. Why is this new to you guys?
But hey, real quick, I'm sorry, Frank.
Go ahead,
before you
go
go,
ahead.
This just reminded me, Eric, Henry over there, Mr. Mappet, man. I don't know if you remember at Top Guy Weekend or not when you were on stage, but he kind of upstaged you a little bit. Do you remember that?
I get upstaged often, and it's no longer anything that stands out of my mind. So tell me how it happened, and it'll come back to me quick.
Go ahead, Henry.
No, Phil, I'm not going to bury your lead. You go ahead.
Hey,
no, bury it. Phil talks all the time.
Go, Henry, go.
It was
Henry,
the last event of the evening. You and Tony Schiavone and Mark Madden came out. We watched a couple of matches from Fall Brawl 96. And I actually think it was Mark Madden that led it off. You were all talking about how it seemed like you overpaid Michael Buffer to not really do anything, how he was just kind of there for filler and for show to make it seem more big fight feel than what it might actually be. And I'll be honest with you, I'd been drinking because I probably wouldn't have done this completely sober. I shouted at the stage.
What's for a Tough Guy Weekend? You can get away with that shit.
I shouted up at the stage. I looked at you and I said, if that's the case, then why the hell didn't you have somebody else do it? Or something like that. And you started to walk off. Like you got up out of your chair, put your hands up mid like you were going to walk away.
You got me.
That's because it was a stupid thing to say. Alcohol influenced or not. For anybody to have the opinion that having Michael Buffer was just a ring announcer, guys. He's not a wrestler. That's the only reason I ever brought him in, is to make everything that we did when we utilized Michael feel special, even if it really wasn't. In fact, if it really wasn't, that was even more of a reason for me to bring in Buffer. So
I don't know if any of you guys were watching, but
my reaction was either I got to get off the stage and take a piss, or that was a stupid fucking question. I'm going up to my room. I don't know which one. I can't remember because I was drinking too.
Well, you came back, and then Mark Madden correctly pointed out that I was partially wrong. That because we couldn't hear him, I went back and watched it later. He was explaining the rules of the War Games match, which was something that was actually kind of functional and critical to what we were seeing in the main event from Fall Brawl 96, which means I probably jumped the gun a little bit, but not being able to hear
little
what he
bit.
was saying.
A little bit.
I like this. I like this adversarial back and forth.
It's not adversarial. I'm pointing out facts.
Yeah, no facts. So what we just saw, that was actually really cool. I didn't see that. I didn't see that coming. So I don't know if you want to explain it, guys.
I was gonna go off of facts. I was gonna what are you alluding to, Frank? Exactly.
Well, no, that was done really well. Asen, they all came around in the ring. Hogan's out there, Brooks out there, and then boom, the swerve. Like, yeah, I mean this. Holy crap! Now this, I'm not kidding you. You guys are seeing this live on TGT. I am now going to go back and follow this storyline because this was done perfectly.
My job is done.
Really good. No, you honest to God, like I legitimately bought the Impact Plus app for this month because we were going to talk to you, Eric, and now I am going to go back and follow this more. This is incredible.
Eric, when you and I have learned so much from being a potted plant and creative and actually getting into the business and just listening and in absorbing, but your first Stickman interview where you were asked, "Hey, do you have a jacket?" Who do you remember who it was?
Sure, it was Larry Zbyszko.
It was Zbyszko. Okay. So have
you not heard that story?
No, I have. I just couldn't. I did not want to. I didn't want to disparage Zbyszko's name. I knew that I had a good feeling it was him or Bockwinkel, but I knew it was somebody big. The thing is, my first interview, Dave Marquez, promoter, throws me in there with a very just released from Impact Mike Knox. A surly Mike Knox.
Oh, I love Mike Knox.
I do too. He was great, and he's like, "Hey, brother, you got to get me through this promo." I have no idea what I'm doing. And so when I do hear your stuff, there are just those things that I've taken away, and it's like I even asked Conrad about it. My favorite quote of yours. Now I might know 95% of the things I know. It's a 5% I don't know, and I asked Conrad that earlier today in regards to being an entrepreneur. Beer. Going over and doing the gambling stuff in Vegas, and he described how you guys were two different types of entrepreneurs.
What did he say? I'm curious.
Oh, I don't want to. Oh, jeez. God, Carl, what are you doing, man? He goes. Eric is so. I would say the inventive and seeing two steps ahead of the curve when you were looking especially at something like Europe gambling. I mean, they didn't have those. You see CSI Miami when you walk into, I don't know, Caesars or whatever. But it seemed like you were trying to incorporate the celebrity part of that. And just hearing, I don't care how granular things get, hearing that you couldn't even bottle a thing of beer until you had get a $500,000 or whatever it was down the drain. Conrad was very... He said I guess in the best way to put it is Eric has such a fire and an eye for it, and he described himself as as a little bit more laid back. Best way to put it.
Well, Conrad is extremely smart. He's one of the smartest people I know. There are times when Conrad and I will get into a conversation about what could be, right? Whether we're talking about growing at freeshows.com or any other thing that we're both interested in. And there are times like Conrad will get into a zone. I'm a reasonably intelligent person. Like I'm no Mensa candidate or anything like that. But I can keep up with just about anybody I've ever been in a room with at any level and not feel like I'm outgunned. There are times when I talk to Conrad, he gets into a zone that is so far ahead of me. And I usually do live 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. I'm always looking up, try to look up over the hill. Everybody can see the horizon. I try to look up over the horizon. I can't help it. It's a blessing and a curse. But Conrad is more, I'll use the term pragmatic. He also sees over the hill. But in my case, I'll just run up that fucker. I won't realize that there's a tree in front of me or that there's trees that are burning that are falling in my path or there's a guy up there with a rifle picking people off down below, I'll just say, fuck it, I don't care, I'm going. And, whatever happens, happens. Where Conrad will go, slow down here, and he'll come up with a better way to get up and over that same hill. And I think we kind of balance each other out that way.
Clint, there's a guy birding up there. Get up there.
Clint
from Hershey, get up there. No, but thank you for answering that. I've always been, because I've always like, man, I'm sure they've got their similarities, but I'm sure they've got the yin and the yang for sure.
Very much so. And I'm grateful for it. Like, it's a blessing to be around somebody that is as smart and has as much vision as Conrad. There's a lot of smart people out there, but smart people without vision tend to, just be smart people.
Yep.
You get smart people with vision, they are capable of changing the world. And I consider myself to be a reasonably smart person with vision, but I just don't have the discipline and the approach that Conrad does. And if I'm ever going to be successful, it'll be because I'm with somebody that has those strengths that I don't have.
Well, I mean, I will say this. I started ad-free shows, and I consider myself an OG, and I started because it was something to wrestle with. But when 83 weeks started, that was it. I was there, hook, line, and sinker. Because Eric, I'm an accounting manager for a restaurant group, and so I look at numbers, I look at figures, I look at finance, I look at check averages, and all of the ways we could save the company money. And so when you start talking about the financial side, you fascinate me. And so you sharing that with a guy like me that spends 70 hours a week looking at numbers, connected to a sport that I love and have loved since I was 8 years old, that means the world to me. I think there was an explanation one time of, you were talking about getting like Mars or Snickers or something as a sponsor, and you were talking about, was it 1,000? You were talking about how much they would pay as a sponsor, and it was one of the most fascinating things that I've ever heard. So you have opened the door for us to not only enjoy wrestling but understand the business side of it, and I think that's what yes, thank you. Yeah, I do. I'm just being honest. Like, that's what draws me to 83 weeks, and I just want everyone to know it.
And I appreciate you saying that. And, it was one of the things when Conrad first approached me about doing a podcast, I was pretty hesitant. You guys probably already heard the story. I won't try to do it again. But Conrad had a vision, and he had a feel that I didn't have. So I have as much fun doing this as you guys possibly can, being a part of it as well. But one of the things that both Conrad and I right away zeroed in on is that, of all the wrestling podcasts that are out there, including Bruce Pritchard, by the way, not so much Bruce. I'm going to put Bruce off to the side. But other than Bruce Pritchard, there is not one wrestling podcast out there, whether it's Stone Cold Steve Austin, Chris Jericho, or name the other 100, right, that have a business perspective. They had a wrestling perspective.
Yep.
They knew more about wrestling. They have forgotten more about wrestling than I'll ever know, in terms of how to put together a match and, how to really draw the emotion out of the crowd. I understand it intellectually, but I've never done it. I don't have any firsthand experience doing that, other than silly shit, that I've done in the ring. That was just gimmick matches, really. But when it comes to the business of the wrestling business, there's nobody out there that can speak to it with any real credibility, other than Conrad and I, because of my perspective. Now, Bruce has a fair amount of both, but Bruce talks more about stories and how creative came together and who's shit and whose cowboy hat backstage, and, whether the size of Batista's, dick and
There it is.
fun, silly, fun shit, right? I tend to stay in the business to business lane a little bit more, but that's what makes the show stand out, right?
Well, right, and that's what fascinates me is like, how do we decide? Like, I've always wondered, like, how much is the rent at the building, and then does that like obviously if you go to Madison Square Garden, the rent of the building is huge, so that obviously gets passed down to ticket prices, and so that it just. I mean, it's like appointment listening for me. Although I am a member of Ad Free Shows, so I do get the video, which I watch every week. So I just adfreeshows.com. And honestly, that's what we're shilling here. And I think everybody that watches TGT with us knows that we are. So I have another odd question for you, because I asked this to Conrad when he did one of our. He did one of our sessions over on Ad Free Shows, and that is the term mark. Now, I've heard people like say, "Well, don't be a mark. You're such a mark. Don't go to the bar and hang. You're a mark." Is mark a bad thing, or is it just another word for a fan?
Well, it's used derisively to describe wrestling fans by people who want to create the perception that they're above it all. And it's usually people with a fair dose of insecurity, because they're trying to elevate themselves above someone else in a situation or a conversation. So they look down their nose and call somebody who's just a really excited wrestling fan, they call them marks. And when the term is used derisively like that in wrestling, I hate it. It's, look, my days of, throwing rights and lefts are long gone. Thank goodness. But I used to get so angry, I would, just for a brief moment, I'd have a, juvenile flash of anger and want to knock some motherfucker out. Because it's like, especially when wrestlers used it, which usually I talk to myself, even in a flash thought of trying to knock anybody out. But I used to lose respect for people, no kidding at all. I used to lose respect for talent who referred to wrestling fans as marks, because, we've all heard the analogy, but you work your guts out to try to get people excited about your product,
right?
And then you shit on them when you get them so excited they want your autograph, or they want to show up at the bar where you're at, after the show, or they want to spend 30 seconds talking to you, or a minute. All of a sudden, that is like, oh, fucking marks. It's like, dude, what is wrong with you? It's mind-boggling to me, why you would do that, or why you would feel that way. And I always, one of my favorite questions is why? Why do certain people use that term? And that's, after thinking about that over the years, I think one of the reasons is there are certain people who are insecure, who try to be better than everybody else in any way that they possibly can. And by referring to wrestling fans as marks because they're really enthusiastic, I look at those people and I'm like, okay, there's your flaw. I know what mine are, and I can clearly see yours. So I hate it when people use that term.
Speaking of marks, me being a quote unquote mark, Eric, you were talking about buying drinks, for the guys. I missed you about 4 fucking different times at Top Guy Weekend at the bar. I asked all of these guys, I'm like, I cannot wait to get down there, buy Eric a drink, and I want to pick his brain about TNA and Aces and Eights and just chat with him for a few minutes. Like, come to the bar. Hey, have you guys seen Eric? Oh, he just left like 3 minutes ago. Fuck. And come back later. I go down there and like, oh yeah, he just missed him again. And, then I'll go down there and I'll wait and then I'll leave. Hey, Eric's here right now. And I'll come back and you're gone. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Yeah. Here's the truth, guys. I joke about drinking all the time and suggest sometimes, or I'll do an Ad Free Show and I'll have a couple beers just to kind of get everybody in the spirit, and myself, because it's a little bit different, right? It's not like a podcast. So, but truth is, especially over the last couple of years, last 2 or 3 years, I just don't drink that much anymore. 4 or 5 years ago, I'd plant my fat ass down at the bar and I'd be there for 3 or 4 hours. So the odds are you couldn't help but find me. But I'll go down for a beer or two, maybe 3, and that's kind of my limit. And then I'm done. So, but hey, we're going to have plenty of opportunities. So the odds are you're going to find me eventually.
I'm going to make it a point to show up a day early next time. I'm just
Yes.
going to sit at the bar. I'm going to camp there.
Hey, I'll give you a hint.
That creepy
I'll give
stalker.
you a hint. Here's your hint. This is going to guarantee you 100% success. If you can find out what time I'm due to arrive at the hotel, you can almost assure yourself that if the bar is open, within 20 minutes of my arrival, I'll stop in and have a beer before I go to bed at night. It's like a habit. It's like if I don't have a beer in this hotel, it doesn't feel like home.
Yeah,
And maybe it's because of all those days on the road. When I go to Marriott, almost every Marriott looks the same on the inside, right?
Just about.
But if I went to the bar and had a beer, I kind of felt like, it's not home, it's a fucking hotel, but I kind of feel like I've been here before, and I'm going to have a beer and relax. So
I'm calling an expert on Eric Bischoff to confirm this story, but she doesn't seem to be answering the. Oh, Lauren sent me the voicemail. I was going to ask Lauren, what's the best way to stalk you in a bar? She didn't answer.
Oh my God.
Eric, the one thing I've always wanted to ask, and this goes back to Eric Fires Back 0.0, where you were like in your house, like in a turtleneck. Like Lauren had never seen it. And late July last year, I get this 803 number, South Carolina number, calls me up and goes, do you have TV experience? And I'm like, well, I was a national TV news reporter in sports. I got out for the same reason, because I was a fearmonger. And she goes, what do we do? Or do you think you could think of something? And I've never told you this, but everything you're watching right now, StreamYard, in which we have the ability to go live stream over social media, I stayed up for, it doesn't matter how long I stayed up for, but I called Lauren back. I probably sounded like Doc Brown, or Martin McFly. It was like, Doc, we got to get back to you. But I'm like, Lauren, we do everything that Eric suggested. We go live. If we screw up, who cares? We do everything and we just let it all out there. And it was like for a month, we just banged out show after show. I was just calling on like anybody I could, NWA people,
I was anybody? I was anybody.
No. I'm sorry. I said late July. I meant late June. We did practice shows all through July. Her birthday's the 8th, mine's the 3rd. But I'm just saying that, Eric, none of this exists without your vision going live. And I wanted to do everything in my power to do you justice with something going forward, to connect people, to grow the family, and to continue to allow us into your community.
that's awesome. And I mean, that's why, when things like this come up, my schedule is really fluid, meaning it's hard to pin it down. Sometimes I wake up one morning and go, I've only got 3 things to do today. And by the time my coffee's gone, I've got 22 things to do that I didn't think I had to do. So it's hard for me sometimes. But when it comes to stuff like this, because of you guys, the Ad Free Show's family, and the impact that it's having on people, and that's really why I'm saying all this. I don't know if you guys saw me on Twitter over the last week or two. I kind of connected with a guy by the name of Ronnie.
Yep.
Ronnie's in a wheelchair.
Yep.
He's handicapped. He's got vision impaired. He's got big challenges. But he's one of the most positive people I've come across in a long time. And there's a lot of people from Ad Free Shows. I responded to one of Ronnie's tweets, and I'm looking at all the people that are responding to them, and many of them are you guys. And it brings a tear to my eye. And I'm not saying this to be dramatic or anything. It's just, I was showing them to my wife this morning while we were sitting outside having coffee with the dog. I said, honey, look at this. Look at the positive impact that a tweet that I responded to, which took me all of about 15 seconds. Mm-hmm. Look at the positive impact that's having. Not only on Ronnie, because Ronnie's getting a lot of support that he wouldn't otherwise be getting, but on the people that are supporting them because they feel good too. It's like, man, everybody's winning here. And it takes zero effort. Zero effort. I spent more calories picking my coffee cup and bringing it up to my mouth for a sip of coffee than I burned responding to Ronnie's original tweet, which started all this. And it's because of you guys and the people that you touch. Maybe they're part of ad-free shows or not, but they see your social media. They know what you're doing. So I really love it when, social media can be a positive thing. Unfortunately, it's not most of the time. Most of the time, it's like raw sewage. Yep. But every once in a while, you find that island in that sea of sewage, and it's a pretty cool thing. So there you go. Thank you. That's my way of saying thank you, by the way.
Thank you.
Oh no, thank you, man. You
thank you.
You a couple months ago, when my stepdad died, you reached out to me by phone and made my day a little bit better, just by leaving me that message and stuff. But I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, brother, and just pass it on, Brian. Just look for those people out there because we all see them, right? Whether we just see them on social media or we see them on the street or they're members of our family or friends or neighbors. Look for those people that just need a little pick them up. You'll feel better.
Yeah,
it's the positivity part. So, I mean, on that note, Eric, we'll let you get out of here. We appreciate you spending this time with us. It means the world. I mean, to me, you're still the guy that came down from the ceiling on a motorcycle and it landed in the ring and said, "God, it's good to be king." That was the day after Slamboree '98, and I was in the crowd for that. It was in Providence, Rhode Island.
How long was that show? I almost called you Rocco. Sorry.
It was only an hour long, but it was one hell of a way to start a show. So I appreciate everything that you have just contributed to my life from an entertainment perspective, and now being able to interact with you is huge. What were you going to say, Phil?
Don't let this man fool you, Eric. He probably shoved a 4-year-old girl out of the way and stiff-armed some old lady to see you, because that's what he does at live events.
What it probably was, Phil, he stiff-armed the old lady that used to stick her finger in Hulk Hogan's chest.
Right. So Eric, I'm a huge Shawn Michaels fan, and when I was 16 years old, I went to my first WWF house show that Shawn was headlining. And this little 4-year-old kid was jumping in. I was like 3 rows off the floor. I just wanted to get to the railing to touch Shawn Michaels. I know that sounds weird. And this little 4-year-old kid was jumping in the middle of that thing. And my 16-year-old stupor, I threw him out of the way to get to the. And so anyway, I'm sorry. Don't hate me. But all right, let's let Eric get out of here.
It's a dog-eat-dog world.
I think.
Yeah, I just took advantage in the wrong way. What? Go ahead,
Frank.
Henry.
I think before we get out of here, it's been a pleasure working with you today, Eric. And I think I can safely speak for all of us when I say that, as far as we're concerned, you're welcome back here anytime you'd like.
Well, you guys call me. I get a little over my skis sometimes. I commit to a lot of things, but once a month, love to join you guys, man. Look for something fun to watch back, and let's have some fun together. Saturdays always work for me.
That's our day. Saturday is our day, sir.
All right.
Well, guys.
On that note, thank you so much, Eric. Everyone out there, take care.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your
14 WrestleManias.
A leg drop, an elbow smash, a body slam.
Are you ready to fight?
Who will survive?
He's got him!
Goodbye. Later. Out. Bye. Out.